Welcome everybody to another episode of Fins Nation. I am your host, Louis Sung, and today what we're going to be talking about, I just wanted to go ahead and point out to everybody how it seems that after just 3 weeks of the 2023 NFL season, the Miami Dolphins have finally, and I do mean finally, garnered some legitimate respect from the national media at large. The Dolphins have finally reached a point where they are performing to such an extent that nobody, and I do mean nobody, can afford to ignore them anymore. We have had these streaks before in the past, the Dolphins winning a bunch of games in a row during the Adam Gase era, and we were wondering, why is nobody talking about the Dolphins? People are talking about the Browns, they're talking about the Steelers, they're talking about all these other teams that were not doing quite as well at the time as the Miami Dolphins were, and yet nobody was giving them the time of day. And as it turned out, that turned out to be fool's gold. It didn't work out. Dolphins fans everywhere were just hurt from the experience, and honestly, I can understand why people would be wary of wanting to believe in this team now. We recently just did an episode of Pulse of Fins Nation last night. You can go ahead and you can pull that up. It was an awesome time, a really fun time. A lot of debating, which was really good. I always love when we can disagree on certain things. But what I really wanted to point out when I talked about it on Pulse of Fins Nation, I'm going to talk about it here as well, is that I feel like at this point, you can just feel that this team is different from all the other teams that have found just a smidgen of success over the years. This is not Adam Gase's Dolphins, where Jay Ajayi has to push and shove for every single yard that he got and ultimately burned out his entire career in 1 year. This is not that. This is not Ryan Tannehill pulling off a Miami miracle with the help of Kenny Stills and Kenyon Drake. And as fun as that was, it ultimately did not amount to anything in the long run for the Dolphins. We got some historic memories out of it, but aside from that, nothing really came of it. And you know what? This is not Joe Philbin's Dolphins. This is not Brian Flores' Dolphins, where it looked like they were going in the right direction, and then things really turned sour when Brian Flores decided, for whatever arbitrary reason, he just didn't like Tua Tagovailoa as the quarterback. He went out of his way to make it so that Tua was not the guy, just letting the Deshaun Watson rumors continue to fester like a cancer inside the locker room. It was honestly humiliating to go through. I hated it from start to finish. And now here we have Mike McDaniel, who only one team, the Miami Dolphins, gave him the opportunity to become a head coach, the only team that even interviewed him. And now it looks like he could potentially be the smartest, the most innovative head coach in the NFL, and I am here for it. And it looks like everybody else in the national media that continue to ignore the Dolphins, that continue to put everybody else on top, it looks like some minds are being changed. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you what's illustrating that. But before that, really quick, just want to go ahead and mention that, as always, this show is brought to you by our good friends over at PrizePicks.com. PrizePicks.com is a revolutionary fantasy platform where you can now pick up to 6 different players across professional sports leagues. Whether that's the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, one of each, it's up to you to decide. Just choose whether your chosen player will get more or less than their projected stat. They give you free squares, special Taco Tuesday promos, Flex Friday specials where you can get your money back if you lose, or multiply the amount of money you can normally win. So with offers like that, it's hard to justify not signing up if you're any kind of a fantasy sports fan. So use the promo code 5, that's F-I-V-E, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. That's promo code 5, F-I-V-E. Go to PrizePicks.com, deposit your $100, and let PrizePicks give you $100 of their dollars for you to play with, and get started winning today. This show is also brought to you by Biscayne Bay Brewing Company. Biscayne Bay Brewing Company is the only brewing company in downtown Miami. They are locally and independently owned. They are the official lager of the Miami Marlins and partners with the Miami Heat. And now you can go ahead and head on over there on Sundays for $6 beer to watch your Miami Dolphins. And as a matter of fact, once again, we are hosting a watch party. So the 5 Reasons Sports Network crew will be there to watch the football game with you. We'll be able to just have some good times. We'll be able to watch the game together, hopefully watch the Miami Dolphins beat the Buffalo Bills and actually show that they are the team to beat in the AFC East, rather than some people holding on for dear life to their trepidation saying, well, maybe, just maybe, this isn't the Dolphins team to remember. But once again, Biscayne Bay Brewing Company, and as per the usual watch party rules, you mention 5 Reasons Sports when you arrive, and your first beer is on the house. So make sure you head on over to Biscayne Bay Brewing Company. Watch party starts at 11:30 a.m. Game starts at 1, and we'll be with you all the way through it. Biscayne Bay Brewing Company, located in downtown Miami. Head on over there and meet us this upcoming Sunday for a great time and great food. All right, folks, so let's go ahead and talk about this. So I don't usually dive into discussing things like power rankings and stuff like that. I did used to write about them way back when I was doing things like Dolphins Wire and whatnot. Those were usually some of the assigned things that I was told to do. Make sure that I checked out the power rankings, did an update on that every once in a while, just to get some content out there. I understand the value of power rankings in at least the journalism field. It's quick, easy content. It's stuff to discuss. But as far as the Dolphins were concerned, we were always in the middle of the pack. It was never really something that we looked forward to other than just seeing how we were disrespected this time. Well, in this case, though, it seems that the shoe is on the other foot. Because now all of a sudden, I went ahead and I just looked it up. I just wanted to see where exactly did the Dolphins rank up as of right now. Because again, this is just a little bit of a reminder here, in case anybody forgot in the past 24 hours, the Dolphins did end up beating the Denver Broncos by a score of 70-20. A score that has not been done ever before. It's scoregami, as they're calling it. I guess that's the official term. I'd never heard of it up until now, but such is life. The thing, though, is that, again, they won by 50. And where do the Dolphins rank in the power rankings as of right now? So if you go to NFL.com and look it up, you have Eric Edom, he's the lead draft writer. He actually has the Dolphins jumping up 4 spots. Guess what? The Miami Dolphins are number 1 on his list. The Miami Dolphins are number 1 on his list. Who's behind him? The San Francisco 49ers, who dropped 1 rank to number 2. So the Dolphins, immediately after that Broncos victory, leapfrogged the San Francisco 49ers in the eyes of NFL.com. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll take a look at some other power rankings here. So if we're going to go ahead and do this, so let's take a look at SB Nation. So right now, the San Francisco 49ers are number 1. The Dolphins are number 2. And so already that's pretty good. You have the Dolphins at number 2. What does ESPN have the Miami Dolphins at in their power rankings? So San Francisco still number 1. Miami Dolphins now jumping up to all the way to number 2. So once again, the situation with the Dolphins is that they just can't seem to get past that 49er hump so far. I went ahead and I just double checked. I looked up a few more, just trying to see where did the Dolphins rank as far as other people go. So if you go all the way down to the bottom, because apparently the Bleacher Report does it backwards, so they just go from bottom to top, not top to bottom. So where do the Dolphins rank for Bleacher Report? Number 2. Where do the San Francisco 49ers rank? Number 1. Okay, fine. You're still picking the 49ers to go first. I don't know what it's going to take for the Dolphins to ultimately beat them all the way through. Went ahead and checked out CBS Sports. What does CBS Sports put the Dolphins as? So once again, it's actually this one. You could honestly make the argument that the Dolphins are being a little bit overlooked here. Dolphins are ranked on CBS number 4. So they have the Chiefs number 3, the Eagles number 2, the 49ers number 1. I'm honestly not sure about the Eagles one. The Chiefs, I can understand the Patrick Mahomes aspect of it, but maybe they're just trying to make sure that the Dolphins can remain consistent in their success. Because right underneath the Dolphins, you have the Buffalo Bills. And obviously that's going to be the game that everybody's going to be keeping an eye on. I think a lot of people out there, in spite of the fact that they're giving the Dolphins a lot of credit now, they think they may still be hanging on to the slim hope. And I say slim hope because I feel like a lot of these people are a little bit upset, honestly, that the Dolphins are so high up on this list right now. I was watching the Carton Show on Fox Sports 1. I always watch these clips because if you haven't seen it already, Mike Oliva, the DolphinsTalk.com on Twitter, you can check him out. He always has these great compilations of clips that go up on the internet. So obviously, First Take, Undisputed, First Things First, whatever national media talk show that you want to throw out there, that's the Embrace Debate situation. First Take basically turned that into what sports talk is nowadays. So basically it's just different people talking about the same things, but everybody has their own different opinion. There are a lot of people, especially on the Carton Show, I was noticing, he expressed just how distasteful, personally, it was to him that Tua Tagovailoa is actually at the top of the MVP conversations right now. Like, he personally hated the idea of Tua being the MVP, but he couldn't deny it. As much as he hated it, he could not deny it because of how well that Tua is playing. So I just find that very funny that even the people who still openly admit, I hate that this is the case, but that's the but. The but is the best part. It's like, I hate that this is the case, but the truth is this is where the Dolphins rank right now, and this is where Tua Tagovailoa is right now. So now, this is where I want to go ahead and I want to bring this up. I can understand where they're coming from when they want to say that the San Francisco 49ers are still the best team in the NFL. Obviously, Kyle Shanahan He obviously has a lot going for him. Christian McCaffrey is a running back, probably one of the best running backs in the NFL, if not the best. I know that Jonathan Taylor is still on the PUP list, so and even when he comes back, I'm not sure that he's actually going to play for Indianapolis. So for all intents and purposes, Christian McCaffrey is the best back talent-wise in the NFL. If you're talking about actual numbers, though, Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane. No, excuse me, not Devon Achane. It is Devon Achane. Devon Achane. It's going to take some time for me to get used to that, I'm not going to lie. But Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane, those two guys right there, statistically speaking, scary. Absolutely scary. But from a talent perspective, I understand Christian McCaffrey is probably considered the best of the best in the NFL right now. So I understand. Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, the defense is still rock solid. Definitely, at least performance-wise, they're definitely better than what the Miami Dolphins are doing right now. But I would go ahead and submit to you, Vic Fangio seems to be getting that defense up to snuff at this point. The only reason the Broncos even scored 20 was because of a kick return touchdown. So that was a special teams thing. That's Danny Crossman, not Vic Fangio. So you want to take away that kick return touchdown, the Dolphins actually only let up 13 points. And forced fumbles, recovering, got a sack, an interception. The Dolphins are all over the place. They're doing fantastic all of a sudden on pretty much every aspect of the game. I don't expect things to be quite as easy when the Dolphins go up to Buffalo and face against Josh Allen again. Josh Allen in the past has pretty much had their number, all except for last season when they showed up in Hard Rock, and obviously the sun roasted them alive, so that helped a lot on our part. We almost got them in Buffalo twice, almost being the key word, but still. Has the gap widened at all in favor of Buffalo? The objective answer to that has to be no. First of all, the Dolphins have not lost to anybody yet. They did face an explosive Chargers offense. They faced a very strong Patriots defense. And obviously they did what they did against the Denver Broncos, who, ever since the loss of Ejiro Rivero and Sean Payton, I'm sorry, I know that he's going to be a Hall of Fame coach someday, regardless of whatever happens in Denver. But with Vance Joseph running the defense, that Broncos team is just abysmal. Abysmal. It's awful. And there are a lot of people out there. I have a friend of mine who is at work. He's a Broncos fan. He looked at me and is like, "Do you really want to talk to me right now?" And I was like, "Yes, I really, really do." I had to rub it in just a little bit when I finally saw him, because knowing what the Dolphins did to the Broncos, you couldn't just ignore it. You couldn't pretend that it didn't happen. This is the thing about work relationships, is that, "Oh, I happen to see that your team lost. How you doing, buddy?" And he just kind of glares at me briefly. But that was the end of that discussion. Either way, though, the Dolphins are doing things that the Buffalo Bills, first of all, they lost to the Jets. Aaron Rodgers only played like 4 snaps before his Achilles tear. And Zach Wilson led the rest of the way. Somehow the Bills lost in overtime to the Jets with Zach Wilson leading the charge. So if you want to say that the Jets' defense is good, fine. Their offense, though? What have the Jets done since then? Absolutely nothing. In fact, things have gotten so bad that a news report came out that an anonymous Jets player threw a football at Robert Saleh's head. That's the head coach that he chucked the football at because he was so angry over the fact that he's remaining loyal to Zach Wilson. He keeps coming out publicly and saying that Zach Wilson is our QB, and the players hate it. They hate it with the burning passion of 1,000 suns. And I can understand why. Zach Wilson is bad, guys. There are Jets. And part of me, a very small part of me, feels sorry for the Jets. Because as much as we thought that Ryan Tannehill was not good enough to get them over the hump, as much as we thought that Ryan Fitzpatrick was not all he was cracked up to be, I thought he was just fun to watch. I never said he was bad. But he was definitely not the franchise quarterback. And as much as people wanted to try to make fun of Tua for not being the juggernaut that he is today, even then, even with Brian Flores, Tua was better than Zach Wilson. It was obvious, objectively obvious, that Zach Wilson was not as good as Tua. I'm sorry, it really was. And there were so many people, even still, who were willing to give up on Tua Tagovailoa back then. But Zach Wilson, for some reason, was getting the benefit of the doubt. But the benefit of the doubt has run out for Zach Wilson. It's gone. Nothing. And yet the Bills still lost to them. Joe Namath has had enough of Zach Wilson. The Bills lost to him. Mike Greenberg and all those Jets fans at ESPN and NFL Network, they're done with Zach Wilson. They can't stand this guy's face. And the Jets themselves cannot seem to stand his face. They went and signed Trevor Siemian, and I am positive that there are a bunch of Jets players in there that are either silently or maybe even publicly petitioning for Robert Saleh to bench Zach Wilson for Trevor Siemian, even though he just walked in the door. And the Bills still lost to them. Then who did the Bills end up beating? They beat the Washington Commanders. Okay. So Sam Howell threw 4 interceptions and he sacked them 9 times. Ron Caniff, who is the co-host of Pulse of Fins Nation on the live show, he mentioned an interesting stat. For every sack that Sam Howell had, he held the ball for longer than 4 seconds. Every single sack longer than 4 seconds. So basically, he's just standing there, waiting for the Bills to come and eat him alive. And they did. They did exactly what they should have done. They took advantage of what the Commanders were giving them. But I'm not going to look at that and say, oh, this is why the Buffalo Bills are just this fantastic juggernaut of a team. You beat up on the Washington Commanders. Okay, Sam Howell? Sorry. Like, at least with the Broncos, with the Dolphins, you can say, well, Russell Wilson was a guy who once seemed destined for the Hall of Fame. Not anymore, but I digress. And then as far as the other team goes, they beat the Raiders. Jimmy Garoppolo. Am I supposed to be scared of Jimmy Garoppolo? I'm not scared of Jimmy Garoppolo, especially not without Kyle Shanahan. The Jimmy Garoppolo is nothing as far as I'm concerned. He's nothing. The Raiders scored 10 points against Buffalo, and Buffalo scored 38 points. Cool. And then against the Commanders scored 3 points, Bills scored 37. But again, who are you facing? The Raiders, the Commanders, and then you lost to the Zach Wilson-led Jets. Again, why am I scared of this Buffalo Bills team? Why are they being given the benefit of the doubt? Regardless of the why, though, it's telling to me that even in spite of the fact that the 49ers keep getting listed above the Dolphins in all these power rankings, it doesn't really bother me that much because the San Francisco 49ers are extremely successful, as are the Philadelphia Eagles, as are a bunch of these other teams. Like, once again, we're looking at it, the Kansas City Chiefs. I get it. They're always going to get the benefit of the doubt just because of how good Patrick Mahomes is. I get it. I understand. But this game against the Bills coming up right now, this could be the thing that gets them over the hump. Because Kansas City and the Eagles and the 49ers, they're going to continue to play the way they're going to play. But a lot of people are still looking at this Buffalo Bills team and thinking, this is the team that the Dolphins won't get past. I don't believe that, though. I have reached a point where I think that there's nobody the Dolphins cannot beat. I once again refer back to last year. In Buffalo, when the snow started, the Dolphins were right there with them. They just couldn't get past that last hump in the fourth quarter. But they almost beat them on the road in a snowy Buffalo environment. And people kept talking about, like, even the people giving them credit, the Dolphins. Stephen A. Smith and Shannon Sharpe, who, by the way, Shannon Sharpe was hysterically angry at the Broncos for losing the way that they did and called out Sean Payton on the carpet, which I thought was very funny. It's very amusing as a Dolphins fan. I find it funny. But even then, they were talking about, well, what's the way that you could beat the Dolphins? Oh, inclement weather. Really? We're still doing this. If it gets cold, the Dolphins are going to freeze up. If it rains, then the ball's going to slip out of Tua's hands. Stop it. He already proved that he can play in both. He's already proved that he can play in the rain, in the cold, all those things that people were talking about. Oh, why isn't Tua playing in a freezer to practice? He already played in the snow and performed. He just couldn't get the win at the very last second. Sorry. That was the team that was still getting their feet under them. This year, though, this offense is a completely different animal. There's nothing about this offense that you can point at and say, oh, well, if they only just fix this, then they would be really good. And they're not quite as good as they could be. I'm honestly struggling to find where they can make an improvement. They have a good balance of running and passing. When they do pass, they have guys running wide open because of how the scheme is working. And again, that's not a knock on Tua that he's finding wide open guys. Why wouldn't you want your quarterback's job to be easy? Would you not want your quarterback's job to be easy? And when it's a difficult throw, Tua's still pulling it off. So all of that comes into play. I'm looking at these Miami Dolphins and I'm thinking, the Buffalo Bills are not a threat to us. We are a threat to the Buffalo Bills. It is time for everybody to look at things and say that it's time for it to be the other way around. If the Dolphins win in Buffalo, regardless of what the score is, even if they win by a score of 10-7, which I sincerely doubt would be the case, but even if that's all it takes, and they still come out on top, I would venture to guess that the tides will officially turn and the Dolphins are going to be looked at as the favorites in the AFC East, the favorites in the AFC, across the board. Because what else can you do? You're going to look at Kansas City and say, oh, this is the last test, the last paragon of hope that we have before we can say the Dolphins are the best team in the AFC. Because so many people are still hanging on to Kansas City and saying, this is the team. This is the promised, the chosen one. Patrick Mahomes. Tua could never hope to be as good as Patrick Mahomes. And that's the thing that we're hanging on to make sure that the Dolphins stay on the bottom rung. I appreciate NFL.com for going ahead and making sure that they make it aware that they think the Dolphins are number one. Even Stephen A. Smith and Robert Griffin III came out and said, yeah, the Dolphins are the number one team, above the 49ers. And there are a lot of people who are starting to catch on to that. I don't want to play this game of the Dolphins are the underdogs. Oh, don't hype up the Dolphins. I don't want to get my hopes up. Stop it. It's time to stop being the battered Dolphins fan. This team is special. It is coached by special coaches. It is played with special players. Tyreek Hill, Tua Tagovailoa, Jalen Waddle. And Jalen Waddle was not on the field for the Broncos. He will be for the Bills. I'm almost sure of it. What can you do to stop this team? Absolutely nothing, as far as I'm concerned. Thank you all for listening to this episode of Fins Nation. Once again, make sure you go to prizepicks.com. Use that promo code 5, F-I-V-E. Just put in your $100, and PrizePicks will give you $100 of their dollars for you to play with, so you can get started winning today. And Biscayne Bay Brewing Company, another Miami Dolphins watch party happening at Biscayne Bay Brewing this upcoming Sunday. So 11:30 is when the party starts. Buffalo Bills game starts at 1. We will be right there with you. Mention 5 reasons when you walk in. Your first beer is free. The official lager of the Miami Marlins and partners of the Miami Heat. Make sure you don't miss out. It's going to be a fantastic time. We will see you all Friday for a Behind Enemy Lines edition of Fins Nation.